Really want to welcome a very good friend of mine, all the way from Paris, Dr. Ran Hindi. Don't put too much stress on him. He had a rough night, so, you need some pills or something?
I'm okay.
You're okay?
Yeah, I should be fine.
Stage is yours, my friend. Rock it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a long night. Anyway, so hi. Just a quick question before I get started. Did it ever happen to you to feel that your phone was vibrating in your pocket and you pick it up and there is nothing? Yeah? Yeah, raise your hand if it happened. Okay. You do realize that this is what we call a hallucination, right? And as it turns out, over 90% of people experience that. It's something that's called phantom vibration. See, my problem with this is it basically shows that we became so conditioned and addicted to technology today that we're imagining things that don't exist. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel that's a bit troubling, especially when you start looking at how much technology we're going to have in the future. This is a very scientific chart showing the growth in the number of connected devices we interact with. Back in 1990, there wasn't any connected devices. This is what we used to call the unplugged era. 1995, the first connected device, your computer, which was connected to the internet. This was the whole internet era. 10 years later, 2005, it was the mobile era. And this time, it wasn't one, it was 3 connected devices. It was a phone, it was a computer, it was a tablet. The only problem is that those devices are not really that smart. They're actually very much independent and competing for your attention. So when you send me a message, it's going to ring on every one of my devices, which makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. And if today with 3 connected devices, you're already hallucinating, try to imagine what this is going to look like in 10 years when we get into the Internet of Things era, with an expected 100 billion connected devices. You're going to be interacting with 30 times more devices on a daily basis. So just think about this for a second. You're today, with 3 devices, already conditioned by technology. In 10 years, there is going to be 30 times more of that. You're going to spend your entire day basically being a slave to technology. You're going to be reacting and learning and doing what those devices are telling you to do. And those devices, as it turns out, are being built by very few companies, which makes all of us robots. I don't know if you want that. I don't. I really don't want that. It's actually terrible. So fortunately, there is a solution to that. It's something we call artificial intelligence. Why? Because artificial intelligence essentially gives those devices the ability to understand you so well that it can start anticipating everything you need to do with them. And if they can start anticipating your needs, then they don't need to interact with you as much. They don't need to be in your face all the time. They can actually start being very much autonomous and going into the background. And this is really important because if you consider the number of connected devices as the perceived friction of technology, then AI is the solution and the anti-friction. The difference is that AI took a little bit of time to take off, but recently the advances in deep learning, for example, as well as the amount of data being accessible and the cheap computing power made it that AI is growing very quickly all of a sudden. So there is a point in the future, maybe 10 years from now, I'm not sure, where the capabilities of AI will far outweigh whatever friction we experience with technology. And this is the real point of the digital revolution. It's not about the internet, it's not about mobile, it's not about the Internet of Things. It's about something we call ubiquitous computing. It's the idea that technology is so smart and integrated into your life that you don't even notice it anymore. You can have hundreds of trillions of connected devices. It doesn't matter because your perception of technology will be non-existent. And so what you see is that the next few years are going to be pretty bad actually for us as people But then whenever AI takes over, very quickly, we're going to flip into this new world called ubiquitous computing. So what I'm trying to say here is that in a not too far future, we're basically going to be in a world where technology is going to solve pretty much every problem, but we're still going to feel things are unplugged as they were 20 years ago. And this is what gets me so excited. And as it turns out, it's not really the first time this happened in history. When you look at something like electricity, well, actually, still a problem here, I guess, not as much as it used to. Electricity 200 years ago, when it was invented, it was something very tangible. Just imagine, Nikola Tesla in his lab with those huge, lightning bolts. This was electricity. It was hard to produce. It was expensive. It was dangerous. You get electrocuted. Your apartment would catch fire. People 100 years ago, during the Paris Expo, actually believed that light bulbs would never be mainstream because, who would want to put electricity in their house? Today, electricity became so mature, so cheap, so efficient, so safe that we put it everywhere. And how many of you here came in the room thinking, whoa, electricity? Nobody. It disappeared from your consciousness. And this is exactly the same thing happening with connected devices. In the future, connected devices will disappear from your consciousness, and you're going to have the sensation of living in an unplugged world. So that's 10 years from now, or 20 years from now. What do we do in the meantime? Let me show you how you can actually start building this kind of intelligence today already. The first thing, if you want to figure out what someone needs to do, you can look at their emails. You can do things like figuring out they have a booking for a hotel, so that whenever you actually arrive at your destination, you don't have to go through your email and look for it. Your phone could just pop out the address of the place you're going to and order a taxi for you automatically. But now that you have the email, you might as well also start looking at the way that people interact through those emails. If you take the people who are inside the email, so the recipients, and you start mapping out the amount of email being sent between all of them with you, you can recreate something called a social graph. You basically here, for example, you see the big bubble in the middle is my co-founder with who I interact a lot. People around it are my team, and you can see those clusters of people working in different companies that I've been interacting with. This essentially gives you very important pieces of information. It tells you who you're most likely to interact with, but you can also start understanding the content of the email to figure out if it's a friend or a coworker, if it's your banker, or if it's a provider of some kind of service. And now that you have this type of information, you can actually start using it to disambiguate natural language. For instance, if I'm talking with a friend about going to a restaurant, right? Then for a computer to understand that is very difficult because I know all of the context, but a computer doesn't. But now that it figured out from my email that this is actually a friend, it can start predicting that it's someone I want to go out with in the evening. And now that I can understand those text messages, I can start also filling the blanks in other sources of data like your calendar. If I wrote dinner with Michael, I know exactly who I'm talking about, but my computer doesn't, unless it had access to all of those other pieces of data. And now that you can do that, you can start essentially providing services in advance, even before the user actually needs it. But of course, not everything is in the calendar. I don't put in the calendar that I go for drinks on Friday nights in a specific neighborhood. I don't put in the calendar that I go to the gym. I mean, maybe I should, but I don't. So for that, what you can do is you can look at location. If you take location data from a smartphone and you map this throughout the day, you can see where people have been, how they actually went there, as well as how long they've been spending at each of these places. And if you actually accumulate that over a number of days, you can start learning habits. So you can tell not just who you're friends with, who you interact with, you can also tell where you would usually go. So with all these information, we can predict with very high accuracy that on a Friday night, you like to hang out in this specific neighborhoods and you like to go out with that type of friends. You can actually start learning that you like to take the metro when you go to work, that you like to take an Uber when you come back from a club. All of these things are doable only with data accessible on your smartphone. And if you take those individual location traces and aggregate it over an entire city, you can also start measuring population flows. This is a project we did in France where we measured hundreds of thousands of cell phones location traces to measure very accurately, more than any company in the world, how many people were taking the public transport. This in turn enables you to create better infrastructure, to create better services, and essentially to make everything around you more efficient. What I'm saying is that to make technology disappear, all you need is to be able to recreate a very contextualized timeline of what people have been doing throughout the day, from which you can start learning people's habits and predicting everything they're going to do. We can actually get to almost 80% precision. 80% of everything you're doing during your day is predictable with this data. So, obviously there's one thing that's kind of scary about this, is that we're essentially saying that we need access to everything about your life. That's kind of the whole point of building such a system. It needs to access every single piece of personal data about you, which is why it's impossible to imagine such a future without having a very clear answer to privacy. And in particular, something that we call privacy by design. Privacy is extremely important for you to feel safe and not have to worry about technology anymore. And the best way to do that is actually to make sure that as a company, we don't have access to your data. Everything I just showed you right now could either be computed directly on your phone, which means data never goes to the cloud, never goes to a server, and nobody has access to it aside from you, or it can use some form of advanced encryption to actually do mathematical computation on the encrypted data directly. And when you combine these two things, you can recreate any service that you have today on your smartphone without ever being able to access your personal data, which is kind of a big deal to me, if you ask me. So what I'm trying to say is just that, since I was growing up, everybody told me the future would look something like that, kind of like the sci-fi movie, like The Fifth Element, where everything would be glass and metal, where technology is in your face all the time, where you're being surveilled by every single person in government and company, where advertising is basically polluting everything you look at. But I don't believe that's gonna happen, and I don't want that. What I actually believe is gonna happen is that the future is gonna look a lot more like this. It's gonna feel like when you're on holiday, when you're disconnected, when you're peaceful. And this is important because by freeing people from technological slavery, we're enabling each of us here to focus on things we actually care about as humans. And this is the kind of future I believe in, and I believe AI can make happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're kind of running really, really late. You see, as a good doctor, he just expanded. But I'm going to take one very quick question. He was first. She's the lady, so your call. I don't care. Come on.
Hi. So I really liked your presentation. I have a minor in cybersecurity. So what I was wondering about in the privacy issue and everyone having everything on their phones, wouldn't this cause, I understand on your part the privacy of the company, but wouldn't this cause a lot of problems with hacking and people getting access directly to all your information in one go?
You mean if they can hack your phone?
Yeah, I mean, if they hack your phone, it'll be like they have everything on you, though.
They already have everything. So we don't actually get any data your phone wouldn't already have. So they're already, if I have access to your phone, I get access to your email, which, by the way, gives me access to your entire life. Because any other service you're using, I could just click on I forgot my password, and I can actually retrieve that from your email. So I think...
Let's remember Celebrity Gate.
Yes. So if your phone gets hacked, I don't think we're making it any worse, actually. So, put a password on it.
Okay, so big applause for my friend Rand. That was amazing, dude. Good having you on stage.